The galaxy was old. Thousands of species had risen from their home worlds, built great ships, and joined the Galactic Concord. They traded with each other, they made treaties, they kept the peace, and they all agreed on one thing about the newcomers called humans. They were strange, they were weak, they were not important. Ambassador of the Dominion had served on the Galactic Council for 300 years. She had seen many species come and go. Some were strong, some were smart, some were ancient beyond measure. But humans were a puzzle she did not care to solve. They came from a world called Earth. The scientists who studied it called it a Category 12. This was the highest danger rating any planet could receive. Earth had a gravity that would crush most species. Its temperature changed wildly from burning hot to freezing cold. Its atmosphere contained oxygen, a gas so dangerous that it could make metal rust and buildings crumble. The planet was covered in predators, poison plants, and natural disasters. No sensible species should have survived there, yet somehow humans did more than survive. They built cities, they created technology, they reached the stars. When they first made contact with the Galactic Concord 50 years ago, the Council did not know what to make of them. Humans were soft. They had no claws, no fangs, no armor on their skin. They were small compared to many species. They smiled often and spoke of peace and cooperation. The Council gave them a seat but paid them little attention. Humans had only one small colony outside their solar system. It was called Elysium Station, a research outpost with just 8,000 people living on it. They studied plants. They looked at stars. They raised their families in the quiet darkness of space. Ambassador barely looked at the human delegates during council meetings. They were polite. They were quiet. They asked for nothing and caused no trouble. In a galaxy full of powerful empires, humans were barely worth noticing. This was a mistake that the galaxy would never forget. Far from the bright lights of the council chamber, in a distant corner of space, something terrible was happening. The hegemony had arrived at Elysium Station. They were not like other species. They did not trade. They did not make treaties. They conquered. For 10,000 years, they had swept across their region of space, taking what they wanted and destroying what they did not need. They viewed other species the way a farmer views cattle, resources to be used, products to be sold. They dropped out of hyperspace like a dark cloud covering the sun. 200 ships surrounded the tiny station. Their weapons powered up with a hum that echoed through the void. Inside Elysium Station, alarms began to scream. Commander Sarah ran to the control room. She was 45 years old, a former military officer who had taken this quiet posting to be closer to her. She had not expected to see combat ever again. The screens showed her the truth. Warships everywhere, more firepower than she had ever seen in her life. "Get me a channel to the council," she ordered. "Now." Her communications officer shook his head. "They are jamming everything. I cannot reach anyone outside the system." Commander felt her heart turn cold. She had heard stories about everyone had. They took prisoners. They sold them as slaves. Men, women, children. It did not matter to them. She looked around the control room. Her crew was scared. She could see it in their eyes. But they were also steady. They were human. They did not give up. "Keep trying," she said. "Find any gap in their jamming. Send everything we have. Someone will hear us." For the next hour, her team worked desperately. The ships moved closer. Warning messages appeared on every screen, demanding surrender. Commander ignored them all. Then her communications officer shouted, "I found a gap. It is small. We have maybe 60 seconds before they close it." "Send the SOS," Commander ordered. "All frequencies, everything." The message went out into the darkness of space. It was simple. It contained their location, the number of enemy ships, and a plea for help. In the background of the recording, voices could be heard, people crying, people praying, and one small voice that stood out above the rest. "Mommy, I am scared." It was a little girl named Myra. She was 7 years old. Her mother was the station's chief botanist. Myra liked flowers and stars and the color blue. She had never seen it before that day. 43 seconds of transmission, then the jamming closed in again, then silence. They boarded the station within the hour. They met some resistance. A few security officers with light weapons fought back. They killed several warriors before they were overwhelmed. Commander was struck down defending the door to the civilian shelter. When she woke up, she was in chains. Around her, 8,000 humans sat in holding cells aboard a massive slave ship. Children cried for their parents. Parents tried to comfort them with shaking voices. The SOS had traveled outward through space at the speed of light. Most of it was lost in the static between stars, but fragments reached the relay stations of the Galactic Concord. Ambassador received the report during her morning meal. She read it once, then set it aside. Elysium Station was in unclaimed space. They were powerful and dangerous. Starting a war over 8,000 humans was not worth the cost. The council met briefly to discuss the matter. They sent a formal protest to the hegemony. They expressed concern. They called for restraint. Then they moved on to other business. No ships were sent. No rescue was planned. The humans of Elysium Station were written off as a loss. What the council did not know was that the SOS had reached another destination. Deep in the Sol system, on a blue and green world covered in oceans and clouds, the message arrived at a military listening post. A young officer named James Torres was on duty that night. He was bored, expecting another quiet shift of monitoring empty space. Then his screens lit up. He listened to the transmission 3 times. He heard the fear. He heard the chaos. He heard the little girl say she was scared. His hands were shaking as he forwarded the message to his superiors. Within minutes, it had reached the highest levels of the United Terran Command. Within hours, it had reached every government on Earth. The galaxy had made a terrible mistake. They had confused human kindness for weakness. They had mistaken patience for fear. They did not understand what they were dealing with. Humanity had spent thousands of years fighting itself. Wars beyond counting. Weapons beyond imagination. They had learned every way there was to destroy an enemy. When they finally united and reached the stars, they had chosen peace. They had chosen to be gentle. But they had never forgotten how to be anything else. And now, somewhere in the cold darkness of space, their children were crying. They were about to wake up. Admiral had not slept in 36 hours. She stood in the center of the United Terran Command headquarters, a vast underground complex buried beneath a mountain in Japan. Screens covered every wall. Officers rushed between stations. The air was thick with tension and purpose. On the main screen, the SOS from Elysium Station played on a loop. Had listened to it 47 times. Each time she heard the same thing, the fear in Commander's voice, the chaos in the background, and the small, scared voice of a child. Her intelligence team had identified the girl. Myra, age 7, born on Elysium Station, daughter of Dr. the station's chief botanist. Myra had won a drawing competition last year. Her picture of a flower was still displayed in the station's school. 8,000 people, families, scientists, workers, children. Gone. The Galactic Council had sent their response hours ago. They expressed regret. They advised caution. They recommended accepting the loss and moving forward. War with them would be costly, they said. The humans should think carefully before acting. Had read the message 3 times, then deleted it. Admiral, her aide said, approaching carefully. The Terran Assembly has reached a decision. Turned to face him. She already knew what they would say. She had served humanity for 40 years. She knew her people. The vote was unanimous, the aide continued. Full military authorization, rescue mission approved, rules of engagement. He paused, swallowing hard. Unrestricted. Unrestricted. The word hung in the air like thunder before a storm. It meant no limits, no holding back. Whatever force was necessary to bring their people home. Nodded once. Begin activation of the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd expeditionary fleets. Contact all reserve personnel. I want every ship that can fly ready within 72 hours. The room exploded into action. Across Earth, the word spread like fire. News channels carried the story of Elysium Station on every screen. Families gathered around their devices, listening to the SOS, hearing Myra's voice. Something old and primal stirred in human hearts, something that had been sleeping for a long, long time. In shipyards that had been quiet for decades, lights flickered on. Massive doors opened. Ships that had been mothballed after the unification wars were pulled from storage and examined. Engineers who had retired years ago answered their phones and returned to work without being asked. Veterans contacted their old units. Men and women in their 60s and 70s reported to military bases, ready to serve again. Recruitment centers were overwhelmed with young people wanting to join. The waiting lists grew so long that they had to turn people away. Politicians who had argued with each other for years stood together and spoke with one voice. Ancient grudges were forgotten. Old wounds were set aside. It did not matter anymore. Something bigger had happened, something that united every human in a way that nothing else could. Their children had been taken. The Galactic Council watched these events with growing confusion. They sent another message to Earth, urging calm. They reminded humanity that they were powerful. They pointed out that Elysium Station was in unclaimed space, meaning no laws had been broken. They suggested negotiation. They offered to mediate. Admiral read their message, then she recorded her reply. "They took our children," she said simply. "There will be no negotiation." Ambassador received a copy of the human response the next day. She watched it in her private chambers, studying the woman on the screen. Admiral was not tall. Her hair was gray. Her face was lined with age. She looked like someone's grandmother. But her eyes had seen many warriors in her long life. She had seen rage and hatred and bloodlust in countless species. But she had never seen anything like what burned in those human eyes. It was not anger. It was something colder, something deeper. It was certainty. For the first time in centuries, Ambassador felt a chill run down her spine. On Earth, the fleets gathered. The first expeditionary fleet assembled near Mars. 40 dreadnoughts, 100 cruisers, 200 destroyers. Ships so large that they blocked out the sun when they passed overhead. The second fleet formed up near Jupiter. More ships, more weapons, more soldiers ready to fight. The third fleet waited near Saturn. Backup, reserve, ready to move if needed. And at the heart of it all floated the flagship. She was called humanity's answer. She was the largest warship ever built by human hands. Her hull was black as night, covered in weapons and armor. When her engines fired, they burned like a second sun. Admiral stood on her bridge and watched her fleet take shape around her. 847 ships in total, crewed by 300,000 men and women who had volunteered for this mission. Her communications officer approached. "Admiral, we have received another message from the Galactic Council. They are requesting that we delay our departure for diplomatic consultations." Did not even turn around. "How long until the fleet is ready?" 6 hours, Admiral." "Then we leave in 6 hours. Do not respond to the Council." The officer hesitated. "Admiral, they are warning us that this could be seen as an act of aggression. They say we might start a war." Now turned, her eyes were hard as steel. "The war started when they touched our people. We are simply going to finish it." 6 hours later, the Terran Expeditionary Force began its journey. 847 ships moved as one. Their engines roared to life, pushing them toward the edge of the solar system. They entered hyperspace in perfect formation, disappearing from normal space with a flash of light that lit up the night sky on 3 planets. The journey to Elysium Station should have taken months. They knew this. The Galactic Council knew this. Everyone knew that humans were slow travelers, limited by their primitive technology. Everyone was wrong. The Terran fleet crossed 400 light-years in 19 days. They had been hiding their true capabilities for 50 years. The galaxy thought they knew what humans could do. They thought the slow colony ships and simple merchant vessels were all that Earth possessed. They had no idea. On the bridge of humanity's answer, Admiral received constant updates. They were still at Elysium. They had set up a defensive position with 200 warships. They were processing the human prisoners for sale at slave markets across the sector. Myra was still alive. Intelligence confirmed it. So was Commander. So were most of the 8,000 civilians. "Admiral," the navigation officer announced, "we will arrive at Elysium Station in 3 hours." Nodded, she picked up the communicator that would broadcast to every ship in her fleet. "All hands, this is Admiral. In 3 hours, we will engage the enemy. Our mission is simple. Bring our people home. Show no mercy to those who stand in our way. Today, the galaxy learns what happens when you touch humanity's children." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Prepare for war." Across 847 ships, 300,000 voices roared in response. The fury of humanity was coming, and nothing in the galaxy would stop it. Warlord was pleased with himself. He walked through the holding cells of his slave ship, the Dominion's Maw, examining his new property. 8,000 humans, not a huge number, but enough to make a profit. The slave markets of the outer sectors would pay well for exotic specimens from a. The humans were strange creatures. Had conquered many species in his long career, but he had never seen anything quite like these. They were soft with no natural weapons. Their skin tore easily. Their bones broke without much pressure. By all logic, they should have been terrified, broken, begging for mercy. But they were not. That was the strange part. They sat in their cells with straight backs and steady eyes. Even the children did not cry as much as they should. They watched him with a look he did not recognize. It was not fear. It was not despair. It was something else entirely. It made him uncomfortable, though he would never admit it. "Have you broken any of them yet?" he asked his overseer, a warrior named. Shifted uneasily. "We have tried warlord standard methods, pain, isolation, threats against their young. Nothing works as expected. They are resistant." Resistant. Their bodies heal quickly. Their minds do not shatter easily. One of the females laughed when we threatened her. She said, paused as if unsure whether to continue. She said what? She said we have no idea what is coming for us. Snorted. Empty words. Their species is weak. They have one tiny colony and a handful of primitive ships. The Galactic Council has already abandoned them. No one is coming. He continued his inspection, stopping in front of a cell that held a human female and a small child. The female was tall, with dark skin and proud features. The child clung to her leg, watching him with large brown eyes. "This one," said, pointing at the child. "She will fetch a good price. Young ones are always popular." The female stepped in front of her daughter, blocking his view. Her jaw was tight. Her hands were clenched into fists. "You will not touch her," she said. Her voice did not shake at all. Laughed. "You are in no position to make demands, creature. You belong to me now. Your child belongs to me. Your entire pathetic species should be grateful we did not simply destroy your station and kill you all." The female did not move. "My name is Doctor, my daughter is Myra, and you have made a terrible mistake." "Is that so?" "You should have killed us." Her eyes burned with something that made take a step back. "Because now they are coming, and when they arrive, you will learn why our species survived a world that should have destroyed us." Struck her across the face. She fell but did not cry out. The child, Myra, immediately moved to help her mother, glaring at the warlord with hatred far beyond her years. "Break them," ordered. "Break them both. I want them crawling when we reach the markets." He walked away, trying to shake the feeling that those human eyes would haunt his dreams. 3 weeks passed. They settled into their occupation. They fortified Elysium Station's orbit with their full fleet of 200 warships. Defensive platforms were deployed. Sensor nets were extended. They sent mocking messages to the Galactic Council, displaying human prisoners as trophies. The Council did nothing, as expected. Relaxed. The danger, if there ever was any, had passed. The humans were alone. Their government had probably already accepted the loss and moved on. In another few weeks, the prisoners would be sold, and he would return home a wealthy warlord. Then the alarms started screaming. Rushed to the bridge of the Dominion's maw. His tactical officers were staring at their screens with expressions of disbelief. "Reports," he demanded. "Warlord," his sensor chief stammered, "we are detecting a fleet emerging from hyperspace." "What fleet? The Council does not have ships in this sector." "It is not the Council, Warlord." The sensor chief looked up, his face pale. "The signatures are human." Felt a cold knot form in his stomach. "That is impossible. They could not have reached us so quickly. Their ships are too slow." 847 contacts confirmed, Warlord. They are human. They are here. Moved to the main. What he saw made his blood turn to ice. The human fleet emerged from hyperspace like a tidal wave of steel and fire. Ships of every size filled the void. Destroyers, cruisers, battle cruisers, and at the heart of the formation, dreadnoughts so massive they made his own vessels look like toys. And at the front, one ship larger than all the rest. Its hull was black. Its weapons bristled from every surface. It moved with a purpose that spoke of absolute certainty. Humanity's answer. How, whispered, how did they do this? No one could answer him. The human fleet did not stop at the edge of the system. It did not send diplomats. It did not ask for negotiations. It simply kept coming, accelerating toward the defensive line at combat speed. Then a transmission came through. All frequencies, all ships. A human female appeared on every screen in the fleet. Her hair was gray. Her face was calm. Her eyes were filled with something that made seasoned warriors look away. This is Admiral of the Terran Expeditionary Force. You have 1 hour to release every human prisoner unharmed. Bring them to the outer marker in shuttles. This is not a negotiation. There will not be a second offer. The transmission ended. Silence filled the bridge of the Dominion's maw. Spoke first. Warlord, they are outnumbered. We have the defensive advantage. Our position is strong. Nodded slowly. Yes, we do. He straightened, forcing confidence into his voice. They are bluffing or not. They cannot defeat a fortified position with superior numbers. They are hopping. We will surrender out of fear. Your orders, Warlord. Bared his teeth in what he thought was a confident smile. Reject their demand. Tell them to turn back or be destroyed. Prepare all ships for combat. The message was sent. The human fleet did not slow down. They did not respond. They simply kept coming. 50 minutes later, the first shots were fired. The galaxy would remember what happened next for 10,000 years. In the holding cells of the Dominion's maw, Myra heard the explosions begin. The ship shook. Lights flickered. Warriors ran through the corridors, shouting in panicked voices. She looked up at her mother and smiled. They came, she whispered. I knew they would come. Doctor pulled her daughter close, tears streaming down her face. Of course they did, baby. We are human. We never leave anyone behind. Outside, the battle raged, and the fury of was just beginning. The first ship died within seconds of the battle starting. It was a heavy cruiser named Pride of the Hegemony. It had served in 43 campaigns and destroyed over 200 enemy vessels. Its captain was a veteran of 30 years. None of that mattered. 3 human destroyers hit it from different angles at the same time. Their weapons cut through its shields like they were made of paper. The ship exploded in a ball of fire that lit up the void for 100 kilometers. Then the real slaughter began. The human fleet moved with a coordination that they had never seen before. Each ship knew exactly where to be and when to fire. They supported each other perfectly, covering weaknesses and exploiting openings. It was like watching a single living creature with 847 bodies. On the bridge of the Dominion's maw, Warlord watched his fleet being torn apart. They are moving too fast, his tactical officer shouted over the sounds of explosions. Our weapons cannot track them. They are pulling maneuvers that should be impossible. Did not understand. The G-forces required for those movements should have killed any crew. Organic beings could not survive that kind of acceleration. But the human ships kept twisting and spinning and diving, dodging fire while delivering devastating attacks. How are they doing this? He demanded. His science officer pulled up data on her screen. Her face went pale. Warlord, according to our readings, the crews of those ships are experiencing 15 to 20 times standard gravity during those maneuvers. That would kill them. It would kill us, she corrected. Humans evolved with heavy gravity. Their bodies are built to withstand forces that would crush any other species. They are designed for this. Another explosion rocked the ship. On the 2 more cruisers vanished in flames. The human dreadnoughts had entered the fight now. These massive vessels moved slowly compared to the destroyers, but their firepower was beyond anything they had ever faced. Each shot from their main weapons deleted a ship from existence. There was no damage, no crippling, just instant destruction. And leading the charge was humanity's answer. Admiral's flagship cut through the formation like a knife through flesh. Nothing could stop it, nothing could even slow it down. In 2 hours, half of the fleet was gone. But the battle was not just happening in space. The Terran Marines had launched their assault. Sergeant Major David led first squad through the breach in the Dominion's maw's hull. Behind him were 12 soldiers in heavy combat armor. Their boots clamped to the deck as atmosphere rushed past them into the void. Seal the breach, ordered. Move to Objective Alpha, prisoner holding cells, Deck 7. His squad moved through the corridors like ghosts. They encountered warriors almost immediately. The aliens were huge, towering over the humans by a full meter. They had natural armor, bone blades growing from their arms, and muscles that could crush steel. The first warrior roared and charged with its blade raised. shot it 3 times in the face, stepped aside as the body fell, and kept moving without breaking stride. "Contact rear," one of his soldiers reported. "Deal with it." 2 quick shots, a heavy thump, silence. They did not understand what they were fighting. They were used to being the strongest, the fastest, the most brutal. They had conquered 100 species with their natural advantages. But humans had no natural advantages. They had claws that could not cut and teeth that could not tear. They had no armor and no venom. So instead, they had learned. They had built. They had trained for thousands of years in the art of killing. A warrior was strong. A human marine with power armor was stronger. A warrior was fast. A human marine with combat training was faster. A warrior was brutal, but it had never fought a war, not really, not like humans had. Humans had spent their entire history learning how to destroy each other. Every weapon, every tactic, every dirty trick, they knew them all. Squad reached the holding cells in 9 minutes. They had killed 37 warriors along the way. None of them had even been scratched. The doors to the prisoner area were locked, placed a breaching charge and stepped back. "Prisoners, get away from the door," he called out in a clear voice. "We are Terran Marines. We are here to take you home." The explosion was precise. The door fell inward and saw something that made his heart swell. 8,000 humans, scared, tired, beaten, but alive. And when they saw the Marines, when they saw the Earth flag on their armor, they started to cry. A little girl pushed through the crowd. She was maybe 7 years old, with dark skin and bright eyes. She walked right up to and looked at him with complete trust. "Are you here to save us?" she asked. Knelt down to her level. "Yes, sweetheart, we are going to take you home." "My name is Myra." "Hello, Myra, my name is David. Where is your mother?" A woman pushed forward. "Doctor, she was bruised and battered, but she was standing tall." She took her daughter's hand and looked at with tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you." "Ma'am, we need to move. Can you walk?" "We can walk, we can run, we can fly if we have to," she smiled through her tears. "We are human." The evacuation took 3 hours. Every prisoner was moved to shuttles and transported to the safety of the Terran fleet. Commander Sarah was among the last to leave. She had a broken arm and 3 cracked ribs, but she refused medical treatment until everyone else was safe. Meanwhile, the battle outside had ended. 178 ships were destroyed. 22 more had surrendered. The Terran fleet had lost 11 vessels. 34 more were damaged but operational. Warlord was captured alive. His flagship was boarded by Marines who fought through his personal guard to reach the bridge. They found him hiding behind his throne, begging for mercy. He was brought to Admiral on the bridge of humanity's answer. The warlord was thrown to the deck at her feet. He looked up at the small human woman who had destroyed his entire fleet. "You cannot do this," he snarled, trying to find his courage. "The hegemony will respond. You have started a war you cannot win." Admiral looked down at him with eyes as cold as space. "No," she said quietly. "You started this war when you touched our people. We are simply going to finish it." She turned to her Marines. "Put him in a cell. He will face trial on Earth for crimes against humanity." As they dragged him away, finally understood the truth. These were not the soft, weak creatures he had dismissed. These were predators, apex predators from a world designed to kill everything on it. And he had made them angry. In the shuttle bay of humanity's answer, Myra sat with her mother and watched Earth ships fly past the windows. She was tired and scared and wanted to go home. But she was also safe, because her people had come for her. They would always come. The news of Elysium Station spread across the galaxy like a shockwave. Every species with access to communication networks heard the story. 8,000 humans taken by a fleet crossing impossible distances in impossible time. A battle that lasted less than a day. 178 warships destroyed by a species that everyone thought was weak. The Galactic Council held an emergency session. For the first time in its history, the chamber was completely silent as representatives waited for the human delegation to arrive. Ambassador watched the doors with growing dread. She had served on this council for 300 years. She had seen empires rise and fall. She had witnessed wars that killed billions, but she had never felt fear like this. The doors opened. The human delegation walked in. They looked the same as they always had, Small, soft, no claws or fangs or armor, they smiled politely and took their seats. Everything about them said peace and cooperation. But now everyone in the room knew the truth. They knew what those soft hands could do. They knew what hid behind those polite smiles. The council leader, a being of pure energy named, spoke first. "We have received reports of the incident at Elysium Station. The council expresses its concern about the unauthorized military action taken by the Terran government." The human ambassador, a tall man named Cole, raised an eyebrow. "Unauthorized." The Galactic Council did not approve a military response to the occupation. "We were in the process of diplomatic negotiations when your fleet attacked." Ambassador Cole nodded slowly. "I see. And how were those diplomatic negotiations going?" Silence. "Let me tell you how they were going," Cole continued. His voice was calm and even. "They were going nowhere. Your council watched the take our people. You received our distress calls. You saw our children being dragged into slave ships. And you did nothing." "They are a powerful force," another delegate said. "Confrontation was not in the best interest of galactic stability." "Galactic stability," Cole repeated the words like they tasted bad. 8,000 lives, families, children, and you sacrificed them for stability. "We did what we thought was best for the greater good." "No," Cole leaned forward. "You did what you thought was easy, what was safe, what kept you comfortable in your chambers while our people suffered." He paused, letting his words sink in. "We will not make that mistake again, and neither will you." Ambassador spoke up. "Is that a threat?" Cole turned to look at her. "It is a promise. From this day forward, no human citizen will be abandoned. No human colony will be sacrificed for diplomatic convenience. Anyone who touches our people will face the full might of Earth. This is not negotiable. And if the Council disagrees, then the Council is welcome to try to stop us." The chamber was silent. No one wanted to test that statement. Far away in the heart of space, the hegemony was preparing its response. Supreme Commander gathered every ship his empire could produce. 3,000 warships, the largest fleet in history. They would strike at Earth itself, destroy the humans, and teach the galaxy what happened to those who the hegemony. The fleet launched with great ceremony. Songs were sung about the coming victory. Warriors painted their ships with symbols of conquest. They expected an easy victory against a species that had gotten lucky once. They never reached Earth. The Terran fleet met them in the space between stars, at a place humans would later call the Pale Reach. It was empty space far from any planet or station, the perfect place for a final battle. Except it was not a final battle, it was an execution. The human fleet had grown. Ships that intelligence reports said did not exist appeared from nowhere. Weapons that scientists swore were impossible tore through armor like it was made of cloth. Soldiers fought with a coordination that seemed almost supernatural. Supreme Commander watched his fleet die around him, 3,000 ships reduced to floating debris in 11 hours. His flagship was boarded last. He tried to fight. He tried to run. In the end, he died with a human marine's boot on his throat. The hegemony surrendered unconditionally 3 days later. There was occupied, their military was disbanded. Their leaders were put on trial for crimes spanning 10,000 years. The slave markets were closed. The prisoners were freed. An empire that had terrorized the galaxy was ended in a matter of weeks. And humanity had done it almost effortlessly. Ambassador sat alone in her chambers after the final reports came in. She poured herself a drink and thought about everything she had witnessed. 300 years on the Council. She had thought she understood the galaxy. She had thought she knew every type of species that existed. Conquerors, traders, builders, destroyers, she had seen them all. But humans were something different. They had come to the stars with open hands and soft words. They had asked for nothing but peace. They had built one small colony and minded their own business, and everyone included had dismissed them as unimportant. That was the mistake. Humans were not weak, they were restrained. They were predators who had chosen not to hunt, warriors who had decided to put down their weapons. They had the strength to conquer the galaxy, and they had voluntarily locked that strength away. Until someone gave them a reason to release it. A simple SOS, a child's cry for help, that was all it had taken to wake the sleeping giant. Finished her drink and wrote her report for the Dominion leadership. She summarized the events simply. They had made a fatal error. They had touched humanity's children, and now the no longer existed as a power. At the end of her report, she added a recommendation. It was only 3 words long. Do not provoke. 10 years passed. The galaxy had changed. The Terran Republic, as humans now called their government, had grown from a minor player to one of the great powers. They did not conquer. They did not threaten. They simply existed, and that existence made others very careful. Slave trade across the galaxy dropped to nearly 0. It turned out that no one wanted to risk accidentally taking a human, or even someone humans cared about. Too many species had treaties with Earth now. Too many had human friends and partners. The rules had changed. The galaxy was more civilized than it had been in, not because anyone had forced civilized behavior, but because everyone knew what would happen if they crossed certain lines. On Elysium Station, life had returned to normal. The colony had been rebuilt, bigger and better than before. New families had arrived. New children had been born. The scars of the occupation were fading. In the central plaza, a bronze statue stood in the sunlight. It showed Admiral holding a small girl in her arms. The girl clutched a toy starship and smiled. Myra, now 17, visited the statue every year on the anniversary of the rescue. She would stand before it and remember the day the Marines had come. The day her people had crossed the stars to bring her home. The plaque beneath the statue was simple. 4 words that captured everything humanity stood for. We will always come. Across the galaxy, in 1,000 languages and 1,000 cultures, those words were known. They were taught in schools and discussed in governments. They were feared by those who meant harm and celebrated by those who needed hope. Because now the galaxy understood. Humans were not conquerors. They were not emperors or tyrants. They were something more dangerous than any of those things. They were family, and they would burn the stars themselves to protect their own. The age of the had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same.